60% mental and 40% physical.
Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Hey, welcome to the BIA podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is a breaking edition of the BIA, and I'm joined by Joseph Hastings. And the long wait has finally paid off. Ohio State has its guy, class of 2021, defensive end, JT Tuimoloau, has committed to the Buckeyes. Joseph, it seemed like it might not ever come, but it finally has. Here we go.
Yes, it felt like this was going to go on forever. You know, we're going to be talking about this next year, the years in the future, you know, all of that, because, you know, it kept on going. The pandemic kept on prolonging things, but Ohio State finally got their guy in JTT. What a huge addition. We're going to get into what this means, you know, for the program, you know, pairing him with Jack Sawyer, but just a massive win for the Buckeyes and a long-awaited one as well. They must be happy to finally, you know, have him. You know, he's going to be on campus soon. And this just is a great way to end off, you know, just a great recruiting process for Ohio State in terms of their pursuit of JTT.
Exactly. Ohio State had, 44 official visits over the month of June. We knew of 41 that were class of 2022. JTT, I guess, would be number 42. So there are two that we still don't know of. We're still working on digging that out. But you know, in terms of immediate impact, this one by far is the biggest, not only because he's number 6 in the Rivals 100 for the class of 21, not because it's just a position of need, but it's immediate because with 22, we have a ways to go for all of these guys to actually put pen to paper and paper in fax machine and all of those antiquated things that you do for National Signing Day. But JTT, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround, and we don't, you know, as this is breaking news, we don't know exactly when he's going to show up, blah, 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 but just monumental news. I mean, and Ohio State, I mean, landing 5 stars is nothing new for Ohio State, but, you know, this one took a while.
Yeah, this one took a while, and, you know, it's just crazy how this recruiting process developed for him because he was very, you know, silent, tight-lipped when it came to the process for the most part. Didn't really speak to too many media members. But a lot of people were wondering, is this going to be Alabama, you know, Ohio State? You know, does him not signing in December or February mean bad news for Ohio State? So that angst, that waiting, you know, over the past few months, and to finally get him on campus, Ohio State seemingly knocked the ball out of the park with that one, with the coaches showing up to the airport. You know, he really seemed to appreciate that. They made sure to let him know that he was a priority for them. And even though Alabama was technically eliminated toward the end, I think that some Ohio State fans will claim this one as a win over the Crimson Tide, you know, since they were a finalist for so long. But yeah, just big all around for the Buckeyes program.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he appreciated the coaches being there. As for certain members of the media, myself included, I don't know on that, but yeah, Ohio State's visit obviously was a big deal. Ohio State drew what was supposed to have been the third of 5, ended up being the third of 4. JTT ends up going from Columbus to Eugene, who, you know, the Ducks ended up really probably being the runner-up here. You know, it's hard to speculate, even if a player comes out and it's like, yeah, you know, so-and-so was my number 2. And we don't see a lot of guys doing that anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, that was a little bit more of a common practice. Don't see it nearly as much here. But, you know, Ohio State certainly had to, you know, roll out the red carpet, which it did. There were no helicopter rides or anything like USC did. But, you know, Ohio State, the only one of the 4 finalists that is east of the Rockies. I mean, while Seattle's not just necessarily down the street from Southern Cal or from Oregon, it's much further to Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State was able, with just the reputation of development from Larry Johnson, a name, image, likeness plan, everything else, whatever it was that Ryan Day and the staff pitched, seem to hit, and they need to bottle that and keep that moving forward because of just how well it worked.
Yes, Kevin. At the end of the day, Ohio State is a national brand, and their weight carries from coast to coast. I've said this multiple times on the BIA podcast, but at this point, Ohio State shouldn't feel deterred when it comes to recruiting and, pretty much any state that they want to. There's obviously, some areas that are going to be dominated by certain programs, but Ohio State has, gone into Texas. They landed two of the top players there in the 2022 class, with one of them being the number one overall player, Quinn Ewers. They've gone into washington and landed the top players from there and in the past two recruiting cycles, and Emeka Egbuka and now JTT. And, it's going to get to the point where whether it's the Pacific Northwest, like Washington or Texas, Florida, wherever it is, Ohio State feels comfortable recruiting just based on the program, the national brand that it has, and also the coaching staff. You talked about Larry Johnson, and Larry Johnson is somebody who had a big role in landing JTT. You have to wonder if Larry wasn't on the staff, he didn't have, you had a defensive line coach who was solid but didn't have the kind of reputation that he had, if they would have been able to pull this one off. It really does seem like Larry would have been, we'll find out more from JTT if he ever opens up about it. But it seems like Larry was kind of the determining factor here. But, I think my biggest takeaway is that Ohio State continues to show why they're a national brand and why they continue to recruit from coast to coast so well.
And it's a big get because Ohio State has a 4-man defensive line class, but 3 of them are listed as, a 3-man class going in. This is now 4. You have a couple of defensive tackles and Michael Hall and Tyleik Williams. Then, of course, you have Jack Sawyer. And with Jack Sawyer being number 11 in the Rivals rankings, JTT being number 6, it certainly looks good on paper, especially as Ohio State hasn't necessarily had that kind of disruptive production since a Chase Young, since a Nick Bosa, since a Joey Bosa. I mean, there's certainly the belief that with a little help on the way, maybe Zach Harrison steps into that, or Tyreek Smith or somebody like that's going to be able to get into that spot. But now you're going to have a couple of all-world true freshmen stepping into the roster. And granted, JTT has lost a lot of time. It's not like he's coming in, completely ring-rusted, 40 pounds overweight, anything like that. I mean, he's still a fine-tuned athlete, but, you're going to have a couple of true freshmen that are going to have a lot of expectations on them as Ohio State fans expect and demand the best.
Absolutely. And look, Larry Johnson is somebody who rotates his defensive linemen, early and often. JTT, even though he has lost some time, I do see him getting playing time this upcoming season. Of course, it's just hard to keep a talent like him on the sideline. And one thing that's really encouraging, you see someone of his status, going out there in the off season and not resting on his laurels. If you followed his account or his trainer's account, he's actively training. It's on a weekly basis. I would see, videos of him training, getting his body ready, staying in shape. Cliff Averill, and a great NFL pass rusher. He was somebody that was working out with JTT and kind of showing him the ropes. So that's definitely encouraging if you're Ohio State and the fan base in general, knowing that JTT may have a little bit of rust in terms of, not playing football. And, in a couple months, not being someone who was like Jack Sawyer, enrolled early, got that playing time, got that early development from Coach Johnson. But it does give the staff a little bit of confidence in knowing that he's going to come in there in shape, prepared to go. Larry will teach him a few things, but I do see him getting on the field this season. And I think you're going to kind of see those glimpses and flashes of what Tuimoloau and Sawyer can be, together, when on the field at the same time. Obviously it won't happen as much this upcoming season. It's going to be more for the next couple of years after that. But I think you're going to really start to see some flashes of what they could be. Man, the potential for this duo is incredible. It really could be something special.
Yeah, and you sit there and you see an Ohio State defensive line, especially at the end position, that's got a lot of players getting toward either the end of their eligibility or moving, at least moving into draft eligibility. So being able to replenish is certainly a big deal there. And then you also look at, not to jump ahead, but we're always looking ahead here at the class of 2022. Ohio State doesn't have any defensive line commits at this point. I mean, maybe you could sit there and say that Gabe Powers could slide down, but that's not the conversation that they've had with him at this point. So you don't have any ends there. So being able to get these two guys together in 21 is a huge get, especially after the flirtations with Wilfredo Ibar ended up leading him to Stanford instead. I don't ever want to sit there and say any recruit necessarily is a must get, but it was pretty darn close to being a must get in my book.
Yeah, I think JTT was a must get just because of the anticipation for so long, it being built up. While there were no visits, the speculation was always, is JTT going to, end up at Ohio State? Is he going to commit to the program? Is he going to sign in December? Is he going to sign in February? What visits is he going to take in June? There's just so much that was going on there. He dominated the conversation for so long that it just felt like, even though they did have Jack Sawyer on board, and Jack Sawyer, just based on everything we've seen, we know about him, he's going to be a beast at the next level, with Ohio State. It just felt like they needed to land this guy in terms of JTT and put him alongside Jack Sawyer at the forefront of their defensive line for the next 3 years, and entice other defensive linemen to come and join the program as well. Because once again, the big thing about Larry Johnson, when recruits talk about him, it's Chase Young, it's the Bosa brothers. If JTT and Jack Sawyer are who you and I think they are, and who Rivals.com and other recruiting industries think they are, they could end up being in that list as well. You continue to build that list, continue to get top draft picks at the position. It only helps Ohio State when it comes to defensive end recruiting in the future. So absolutely, I would go as far as to say that it was a must get for Ohio State, just continuing that tradition of churning out these top pass rushers on a yearly basis.
And we'll, of course, have plenty more coverage on BuckeyeGrove.com for you to check out with this breaking news of JT Tuimoloau committing to Ohio State. Really, at this point, once you're committing, you're signing. So be sure to check all that out. Joseph, as we come to the end of the show, any other things that we did not touch upon? Again, this is kind of breaking news. Haven't necessarily had a chance to wrap our head around it completely, but anything that I didn't ask you that we're not touching upon that needs to be talked about.
No, I think everything was kind of discussed. We're hoping that JTT will reveal a little bit about this recruiting process. Just kind of open up about how it was for him. What everything entailed. What he felt pressure to commit or sign early or what have you. I'm just very interested in kind of seeing what it was like for him. But we're going to be reaching out to some family members that we know from him. Hopefully that we can get a piece going. And the final thing I'll leave off with, Kevin, spending time with me, I'm a perfectionist. I did say that Ohio State landed the top two players in Washington in the past couple of cycles. I meant to say in the 2021 cycle in Emeka Egbuka and JTT. So I just wanted to clean up my mistake there. But yeah, overall, what I'll leave it off with is that Ohio State secured a major win. This was, even though they landed Darren Hayden and Caleb Brown in June, in the month of June, this is probably the biggest visitor win for them, in terms of prospects who stepped on campus and committed after. I think this is the biggest one and probably will be for the entire year just based on the anticipation. So, yeah, just a huge win for Ryan Day and company.
And there you go. And as I said, keep it locked in on BuckeyeGrove.com for anything else that we can chase down on this breaking news. Once again, JTT has committed to the Buckeyes over Washington, Oregon, and USC. So big news there. Joseph, thanks for joining us here on short notice for the show.
Kevin, thank you so much.
And I want to thank you all for listening. Again, we will have more as we are able to chase it down. But JTT, Ohio State, a match made in heaven, just took a minute to get us there. But once again, it's the BIA podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you very, very soon.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game, exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing, and come visit us over at BuckeyeGrove.com for all the best Ohio State information on the web.